Hey folks, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. I have a confession to make. I have been driving around since, March the 3rd as a potential criminal. If I had been pulled over, I would have handed the officer my license and he would have come back and said, "Sir, your driver's license is suspended." So how did this happen? Well, on November 5th of 2024, I confessed on this podcast/radio show that I was pulled over for speeding in Greenville. I didn't realize, I thought the speed limit was 55. It was 40. I was going 57. And the girl didn't care anything about my apologies. She was a female officer. And so she gave me a ticket, November 5th, 2024. I failed to appear in court. Why? Because I didn't write it down. I forgot. Normally when I get pulled over, I get a ticket, which is rare. But occasionally I do. I pay the fine as soon as I get home. But for some reason or another, I didn't. And so anyway, I got this letter. I saw it yesterday morning from the Tennessee Department of Safety. Notice of proposed suspension. The date of the letter was February 3rd. I had 30 days to pay the ticket, or my license would be suspended. What was yesterday? March 22nd. Sorry, March 21st. So it was already suspended. I went on the website. I put in my driver's license number. Suspended. So I've been driving illegally for that period of time. So anyway, I went down and paid my fine at the police department. Of course I was driving. I just didn't think anything about it. I just drove illegally, another misdemeanor. And then I came back to the dealership and I was trying to, on my computer, go in there and do everything online, scanning the document that they gave me saying that I'd paid my fine. And then it said I had to surrender my license. And I called and they said, no, you can't just, say it's surrendered. You've got to give it to somebody that works for the state of Tennessee. I said, where do I do that? Well, you can do it at the police department, but then it will be a slow process to get reinstated, or you can go down to the driver's license office. So I had my nephew, Max, drive me down to the driver's license office yesterday afternoon, and I picked a number. I had to wait in line just like everybody else, of course, and I was just sitting there, and there were only like 5 or 6 people ahead of me. So I have my license. I'm ready to hand it over to them and not drive for 30 days. That's the way I interpreted this letter. I'm not always real impressed by my reading comprehension. But it really doesn't say anything on here that it just says 30 days here and 30 days there. So I assumed I was done for 30 days. So I walked up to the lady and I said, well, here's my license. She said, what are you turning in your license for? Well, I didn't pay a traffic ticket. Here's proof that I paid it. She said, okay, hold on just a second. And while she had her back turned, I said, there no kind of a temporary license that I could get so that I could drive? She said, oh, yeah, I'm going to give you a temporary license. I said, you mean a temporary license that I can, drive right now? And she said, yeah. And then we got to take your picture again, and that'll be for your new license. Well, I'll be. I had no idea. I thought I was cooked for 30 days. I'd already called my wife. We were going to go to Asheville on Sunday. And I said, honey, you're going to have to drive. Why? I don't have a license anymore. What? And so we went through all of that stuff. But now I have a license and I can drive to Asheville on Sunday. So what's the moral of the story? Pay your fines. As soon as you get home, write a check, send it in, call, do something. Don't go through what I went through. It ruined my afternoon, but I'm better now. So let's get on with it right after this break. Okay, I was prompted to bring up a subject. It does sound a little judgmental. I'll admit it. But whenever my wife says, well, that sounds judgmental, if I make a comment, I said, no, that's not a judgmental. I'm just making an observation. Right. So I was making an observation today as I was driving to work. I looked over past a little, Toyota Camry, gray. And anyway, as I was driving by, I looked over, and it was a she had the thickest covering on her steering wheel that I've ever seen. It looked like shag carpet from the 70s, except it was pink. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do a show on questionable, I started to use another word for questionable, but let's just call it questionable things people do to, with, or for their cars. The first one is carpeted steering wheels. You know, the government and all of the people who know about the important things about being able to control a car, like race car drivers and stuff. You'll never see a Formula One or a NASCAR driver with their steering wheel carpeted. It just is, it's foolish. You cannot control the car. What if it slips? What if it slides around? You know, I've seen them with leopard prints. You know, I've seen them look like, horse hair. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some pretty crazy ones. This pink shag carpet just pretty much did it for me. You know, they can't be. Why do that? Isn't the steering wheel good enough as it is? I mean, it's covered with leather most of the time, or with vinyl that feels just like leather. I mean, why do you want something so thick that you can't even get your hands around it? To me, that's questionable. Another thing is I saw it was the day before I was driving home late. It was getting dark, and this Jeep passed me. Now, you normally don't see these on a Jeep. I'm talking about a Wrangler. And it was jacked up, too. The guy had his rear glass open, and he had his big speakers sticking out of it. That's a different subject, because apparently he thinks that everybody else wants to hear that rap music that he's listening to, and it was quite objectionable to me. But there I go judging again. Sorry, that was an observation. And so he had the whole underside of his Jeep lit up like a Christmas tree with LED lights. They were on his rear axle. Looks like they were on his shock absorbers. And it was not really that attractive. That's questionable, don't you think? Let's see, another thing that I've thought about, and this happened a couple weeks ago. I saw one of those diesel trucks, this kid. Well, I'm assuming it was a kid. That's a little bit judgmental because the windows were tinted really dark. I could not see him or her, whatever it was. I couldn't see him. And they were rolling coal. Do you know what that is? That's when a diesel truck, somehow they have a switch or something that allows excessive fuel to enter into their combustion chamber. It doesn't get burned, and it comes out the tailpipe as massive clouds of black smoke. It is definitely contributing to global warming, if that's your thing. But yeah, I think that is questionable, something that people shouldn't do. I don't know what the point is. I had it happen one time when I was riding my bicycle, and I was on a little 2-lane farm road, and I hear him coming. Big black truck, deep tinted glass, had these huge exhaust pipes coming up out of the bed. Looked like a big over-the-road tractor trailer rig. As soon as he gets up beside me, he hits a button, does something, and I am covered in black smoke. And I bet he's just horse laughing at the same time. I was choking and cursing. Well, I don't know if I was cursing or not. I was not happy. I thought it was rude. It's very questionable as well. Okay, another thing. Anything that blocks your view of important things, I think is questionable. Don't you? How about all this stuff people hang from their rear view mirrors? If you're going down the road right now and you've got a bunch of stuff from Mardi Gras and maybe a dream catcher, I don't understand it, why you would want all that stuff. Go around a curve and it's swinging one way, go back around the other way, hit slam on your brakes and it's banging against your windshield. I do not understand that. Somebody needs to explain. Do I need to understand it? No, because it's not my car. That's me being judgmental. Sometimes you'll see a bunch of air fresheners hanging there, like 4 or 5 of them. I mean, does their car really smell that bad? Or do they just like the smell of wild cherry or marshmallow, cinnamon marshmallow? I'm just making up names. Rearview mirror stuff, it doesn't make sense. And also, I understand grandparents love their grandkids. I love my grandkids too, but I don't have pictures of them all over my dash. The pictures of my grandkids are either in my wallet, on my desk, or all over my house, maybe on the refrigerator, not covering up my temperature light, my airbag warning light, my brake lights, my tachometer, the gauges, my gas gauge. I mean, how do you know how much gas you have in your car if you got a picture of, Susie covering it up? It doesn't make any sense to me. That's questionable as well. Another thing are, just like I said on the truck, is extreme tint in windows. This is against the law, but people do a lot of things that are against the law, just like I did. I was speeding. But I don't think you get traffic tickets for too dark a tint. You must not, because they're ubiquitous. That means there's a bunch, they're everywhere. And so my daughters do it. First thing, I got to get my windows tinted. Why? I don't understand. You can't see at night. I think it leads to accidents. There's no way. I despise driving my daughter's vehicles at night. I can't see. I can't see to the left or right. And then they also have that piece that comes down on the windshield. My daughter, Abby, had her entire windshield tinted and had the strip put across the top. When I put on my sunglasses, I guess it has something to do with the polarization, but I'm seeing rainbows everywhere when I'm in her car. And when I turn, it's weird. Polarization is a weird thing. It bends light. So if keep my head normal, I see the rainbows. If I turn my head sideways, I don't see them. So I'm going down the road with my head sideways, leaning on the console so that I don't see rainbows when I'm driving their vehicle. That's not good either. Okay, I've got several more, and I'll get to those here in just a minute. Be thinking about ones that you don't like and send them to me, LennyLawson2020@gmail.com or 423-552-2020. I'd like to find out what you think is objectionable or questionable or whatever. I'll be back in just a minute. While we're on the subject of questionable things that people do to their cars, let's talk about a few really practical ones, mistakes that I often see, especially when I go to the gas station. This happened the other day. I pulled into I think it was the Mobil station where I have to buy 90 octane pure gas for some of my older cars. And I saw a customer of mine that I know pretty well. She has a Nissan Rogue, and I noticed she was putting premium fuel in it. And I asked her, why are you putting premium fuel in your Nissan Rogue? She says she does that once every like other tank full or something, just to keep things cleaned out. She thinks it's better for the engine. And of course, I didn't want to criticize right there on the spot. I said, well, you really don't need to do that, because the car will do better on regular unleaded gas. That's what it's designed for. So when do you use premium? Well, if your car doesn't require premium, then you never use premium, because it does no good. It does not help your engine, doesn't clean anything else. The stuff that's in the gas, the premium fuel, I should say, to clean keep your spark plugs clean and fuel system clean, it's all in the regular gas as well. The reason some engines need premium fuel is because they're high compression engines. Like if you look at, like a lot of Lexus and Porsches, my car requires premium fuel. And there's a few Fords that we have sold over the years that require premium fuel. Some of them just recommend premium fuel. That's weird. But if it says required, you better do it, because it can cause pre-detonation, spark knock. I had bad experience with spark knock on a vehicle not too long ago. It destroyed the engine. It broke pistons. And that's what happened. A lot of people say, well, it's just the valves rattling. No, that's not what it is. That is the piston itself rattling against the cylinder wall. So you don't want that to happen on your Lexus or your Porsche or whatever you're driving that requires premium fuel, okay? Okay, so I covered carpeted steering wheels. Let's see, rolling coal, extreme wind. Oh, another thing on tinted windows, something that bugs me is the DIY window tinters. You know how you can tell somebody put their own window tint in? Is because there's these big bubbles all over the rear glass, because that's the hardest place to do. And I think they do the side window or both side windows on both sides, and then at that point they're over it. And so now the last one to do is the rear window, and they just said, oh, heck with it, and they just stick it up in there. You know, it really doesn't cost that much to have your windows tinted. You might as well let a professional do it. It'll last longer and look better. Okay, one safety item here. If you're pulling a trailer, folks, and you've got a lawnmower on it, or, I don't know, some other piece of equipment, maybe some bicycles, what happens if they're not strapped down? If you slam on your brakes really hard or you hit somebody, that Murray lawnmower is going to be a projectile and could really hurt somebody, including you. It could come through your back window. Please strap down the stuff you are trailering. I got behind a guy on the bypass, as they call it down here in Greenville, the Lebany bypass. You know, when we first moved to Greenville, people were talking about the Lebany bypass. And my parents were wondering, where the heck is Lebany? You know, and what they were saying was 11E. That's Highway 11E. So anyway, as I was saying, I was driving home, and there was this guy pulling his lawnmower. It was one of those zero-turn mowers, and he had it in the back, and I was just coming up on him, and I just wanted to look and see if he had it strapped down, and he did not. And I got up beside him, and I did not give him the stink eye, but I was just looking. You know, this was an older person. They should know better. You just have to strap down that stuff, and it doesn't take much. And probably even if you strapped it down, it still could come loose if you're in a bad enough accident. So it's just something to be considerate about what could happen and how it could impact other people. And then another questionable thing that people do, and I've done this, I've changed the tire sizes on my vehicles. And a lot of people don't realize that it can definitely impact different components on the car, but one of the main things it does is it makes your speedometer off. If you put on a tire that has a larger circumference than the tires that came on it from the factory, then your speedometer can be off by anywhere from 5 to 10 miles an hour. That could lead to speeding tickets if you weren't careful and didn't realize it. So, you know, your car is engineered from the factory. Car, truck, SUV. I say car. They're engineered by engineers, and they know what tires need to be on this vehicle. And if it has certain suspension components, certain axles, the bearings in the axles, you know, they're all designed for a certain tire size. If you put different wheels on a vehicle that have a greater offset, meaning that, you know, just they have a deeper dish, then that pushes the tires out further and puts more stress on the wheel bearings and the gears. And if you change the tire sizes, if you buy like an F-150 or a Silverado and you go up dramatically in tire size because you want to lift it, you know, you put a 4 or 6 inch lift on that vehicle and lift it to the sky, then that puts a whole lot of stress on many components. And I'm telling you, if you have a failure to your driveline and you bring it into some car dealerships, they will refuse to do warranty work on it because it has been modified to the extent that it can impact those critical components. See how this discussion got serious all of a sudden? Now, since we're serious, let's talk about all those ducks on the dash of just about every Jeep that is going down the road, especially if it's driven by a woman. Now, I know that I'm extremely observant to what people drive, how they drive, you know, carpeted steering wheels and ducks on the dash. But when I see an entire dashboard covered with rubber duckies, I've got to question what's going on in there. And I know it started on TikTok. It's if you like somebody's Jeep, you're supposed to have a supply of rubber ducks, probably an assortment, in the back of your vehicle, so you can share some love. You know, you see somebody, really nice Jeep. Honey, that's a nice Jeep. Get one of the ducks out of it. Go over and put it on their fender or their hood. And then they come out of the store and say, oh, we got another duck. I guess people just looking for love, right? Looking for some validation from their fellow Jeep lovers. Only problem is I saw one the other day. This Jeep had, I think it was like an army green. It was a dark green. And it had pink and light blue trim all over it. I think they'd even painted part of the wheels pink. And it had rubber ducks completely consuming the dashboard. Now, somebody must have a wicked sense of humor to think that that's a good-looking Jeep. Or maybe they just felt sorry for him and thought they might need some rubber duck love. Who knows? People are different, just like my wife says. Well, thanks for listening to this somewhat odd edition of My Car Guru. If you have any serious questions about your vehicle, you can always text me, 423-552-2020, or call. I may not answer. It may go to voicemail. Can't promise I'll answer, but I will get back to you. Or you can send an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.